Hi, I'm Gene Cavassis, and I'm going to show you how to make a YouTube set, so stay tuned. I had the opportunity to build a full set for a client that has a fairly small space with a green screen on one end, which they want to keep, and a large format print on another wall, which we'll incorporate into the set. Now the room is only about 14 feet by 18 feet, so we have a real limited space to work with, but that just makes it even more of a challenge. But the toughest part was we had to build the set, and it could not touch or be anchored to any of the walls in the room. So I started designing the set in Photoshop, and by taking a photograph of the room, started laying out how I wanted it built, and then actually in pieces. So putting the floor in, showing the panel 1, 2, the center panel, the side panel with the window in it, then adding I-beams for decoration, and then of course the window panes into the window. Now I wanted to make sure that the client really understood the design and had a good concept, so I went ahead and built a model as well. Now you don't have to do this, but it was great for me to be able to do that and work with the client that way. Also, it even helped me as to where I needed to place everything and how much room I had to work with. I took the design idea from a lot of popular talk shows these days, everything from Rachel Ray to CNN. They're all using that warehouse look, used brick, as well as sometimes exposed beams and different things like that. I love the look. I thought it'd be fun to play with. Now, getting to the brick, I chose to use an actual photograph of brick, and with my friends at SignMasters of Virginia Beach, they printed the large format panels in 4-foot by 8-foot sheets for me from an actual photograph of real used brick. Worked out really well, and a great shout out to SignMasters. The material I decided to use for the background that the brick was adhered to is a material that's called Coraplast. Now this is a corrugated plastic material that's very lightweight and often used for yard signs, but we were able to actually buy it in 4x8 sheets. Worked really well, and SignMasters installed the decal material on it. Plus I ordered one 4x8 sheet of the decal and one blank sheet as well, so that I could build the section under the window. Now you could go with brick paneling, and that actually comes with even a texture on it, and that could work well, but I've seen it used so much on different applications I felt like people would recognize it, and I wanted to go with something a little more unique. So that may be a cheaper route to take, or you could use, it doesn't have to be brick, you could use just about any panel, or you could use 1/4-inch Luan plywood and paint it or do anything you want with it. The big trick is keeping it light and framing it up on the back side with 1x4s, or 1x3s actually is what we picked up, to frame all the way around. The one thing to keep in mind, whatever you use, make sure your colors and your paints and everything are flat and not glossy, because you don't want the lights picking up the gloss from that and causing a glare that you don't need, or even reflections. Now, when I built the I-beams are actually built out of pre-primed 1x6s with a 1x4 in between to make the beam. I started by painting all the material a battleship gray. The paint I used was a flat latex, and I just kind of hand mixed it from a lot of paints that I often buy from the big box lumber stores in their Oops paint sections. These are paints that have been mixed to the wrong color, or that the customer never picked up, and they sell them for a fraction of the price, and you can mix them up, and trust me, gray is real easy to reach. So after mixing that and painting all the panels, I allowed it to dry, and then came back and assembled the beams. Now the beams, I used a combination of grabber screws and also using an air stapler to secure it and glue it as well. After the beams were dried, I came back and did a faux finish with using darker gray and then a little bit of a rust color, and applied that using a piece of foam. Now, this might look real coarse, but trust me, you're going to come back and kind of soften this look out in a little bit. I then took a 3/4-inch dowel and cut those into 1/2-inch pieces. Had to actually cut about 70 or 80 of these. After you've done that, of course, you're going to have to go through and sand each individual one. But then after that, I lined them up and sprayed them with flat black paint. Now we come back and we glue and staple every one of these measured out to the top of the I-beams. This is going to give it that rivet look when we're finished. After the I-beams have the small dowels glued to them, I took the original battleship gray latex and I cut it down about 50% with water, very thin, and did a brush over the entire beam and the sides of it, and then took the sponge and kind of softened some of that out. So what's happening now is you're getting kind of a washed surface on this, and it worked really, really well. Now, setting those to the side, we started to build the window pane. Cutting up my materials, I also cut the exact width of the 1.5 inches of each of the window panes, putting a slot half the distance of the material by the width. On both sides of those will help to make it an interlocking window pane and make it easy to build and easy to hold together. After they're all cut, and I used 16-inch centers on this, so after they were all built, I then used liquid nail, putting a daub on each of the spots, locking the pieces in, and used an air stapler to secure everything. Completely built, I set it down and spray painted it with several coats of flat black. And now I've set that aside to dry. So now it's time to get started on the panels. With the panels, you're using 4x8 material, but you're going to actually want to bend that material around the edges, so you're going to subtract roughly 2 inches to 3 inches on the sides. So on these we actually ended up making them, instead of 48, they were 41 inches wide, and then built the frames according to that. So setting the frames up, I screwed each one of the frames down and glued them as well, and after each of the frames were ready, I put liquid nail on the front of them and then secured the panels down on each of these. Now, folding that first edge down and applying liquid nail to that and applying some more staples down the side of that to make sure that everything is secured. You're going to want to pick a pattern to your brick and make sure that everyone is located exactly the same space on the bottom of the panel. After I've built my 3 basic 4x8 panels, now I've got one panel that's going to be used as a 45-degree angle on the side. So with that, I built it the same width, but now I came back into the chop saw and I cut the edges of the top, middle, and bottom on 45 degrees. After you've glued everything up, set those aside. Now it's time to build the brick section that'll fit underneath the window. With this, I also want to add a 4-inch mullion across the bottom so that the window can set on that and give the look of a solid, real brick image. So after I've built this, I've now will glue and staple the Coraplast to this. Now you'll notice this is the white Coraplast and doesn't have any of the brick pattern to it. Now after fabricating the basic panel, I brought it inside to apply the brick. Applying the decal material to the brick is not as hard as it might look, so don't let it intimidate you. I was using a soft squeegee and coming in and starting with one edge and applying it from the edge all the way to the other end. The great thing is, if you get it wrong, this material is pretty much repositionable until you've really squeegeed it all down. The second panel I cut to put on, you have to kind of line up and make sure that your mortar lines on those bricks are going to continue down the same way and that you can continue that pattern. That might include you having to overlay that a little bit on each one. So after laying the 3 panels down, now I came back and turning the brick pattern the opposite way, started applying it in small pieces all the way across the top and folding it from the top, down the sides, and underneath all the way. So now we've got that built. So now everything's pretty well put together, so it's time to test it out before taking it to the client and installing it. We start putting it up and trying it out and see how everything fits. I'm I'm really happy with how everything is working out and holding together, and it looks like it's going to work just fine. I'm using C-clamps on the top to hold the beams to the background panels, and those work fine, and we'll see if the customer wants to use something like that or actually screw them together. So now, after testing everything, everything looks good. It looks like we're ready to take it to the client and set it up. Now that we have it at the client's office, we're going to, with a little help from my friend Chris, we're going to start putting this together by installing all the panels around everything, including the existing mural that's on the wall. Everything went really, really well. The great thing with this is we still never touched anything on the walls. It's freestanding and it's really quite rigid. Thanks a lot for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed building this project. I put a description, sizes, and links to products down below in the description section. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the comment section down below, and I'll try to get back with you as soon as possible. Also, please consider subscribing to our YouTube site, and let us know if you have anything in mind that you'd like to see us do a DIY on, or even a product review. We really enjoyed this, and I hope to see you soon.